Hi, I'm Tom at Ledgemere. We're going to do a couple episodes of what I call toys versus the real McCoys. I'm going to start with a couple of the oldest toys that I have. Now, being an IH guy, I know it seems weird to you that I have John Deere's, but I actually collected both pretty much evenly as I was a kid growing up. This right here is an Arcade John Deere A, and it was built in the 1940s. It was one of the first ones built. Arcade built, I think, an Oliver, an Alice Chalmers, and a Farmwell H, and a John Deere A. You can see this one here. It's all molded together in one piece. It's not steerable. The wheels turn. It's not really 1/16. It's a little bit smaller. This one here is 1/16. It's a little bit bigger. This one's got a few miles on it, so the wheels fall off sometimes. This is a John Deere A built by Fred Ertl Sr., and the story goes that his son, it might have been Fred Ertl Jr. or another one, but he had one of these and it was broken. He couldn't fix it. And Fred Ertl worked in the die-cast department at John Deere, and he was laid off. So in a way to make some money, he had the idea to cast some tractors. So he started with the John Deere, and the John Deere A, like this one, this is a high post A. The first one actually looked just like this one. And I'll grab you the replica I have of the very first one. So this right here is a 40th anniversary. See, he's got like a straw hat going on. It's a little bit different. This one here, he has more like a bus driver hat. Let me get that in focus. So you can see it's a little different. So they're a little bit different, but very similar. And so this was the first tractor, or a replica of the first tractor that started it all, and they weren't steerable. So then came this high post A, again, not steerable, but they made cool attachments that really worked like the real ones. For example, you can raise and lower the bucket, and then you got this trip bucket right here, and it's actually on a pull chain like you'd have for a light. You can see that right there. There we go. You can see the pull chain right there. This one has a little bit of damage to the muffler. The air cleaner was in behind, and I don't want to try to pry it because being die cast, it'll break off, or it's likely to. But you can see it's got a spring on the dump, and usually, it's a trip bucket, so you have to drop the loader, and it would reset itself. A spring on the lift. Nothing really fancy on the back, just a circle hitch to haul drawn implements. Now, Fred Ertl started making these toys out of aircraft aluminum that he was able to get. Being after World War II, there was quite a surplus of airplane parts, and so the die cast are basically a mold, or two halves of a mold, and the aluminum's put in there, heated up, melted, and then cooled off, and then the two halves of the tractor are put together, and usually with rivets that'll hold the two halves together, and the tires. So his wife would paint the tractors and put the wheels on. All handmade originally. In the house, when I go back in, I'll show you some more of those old tractors. Now, Arcade, as I said, made four different models to start with, and then Fred Ertl. And at the same time, there was another company called Esca, and it was Caskell and Bud Essman. And so Esca was formed by using the first two letters of the last names of both of them, so ES and KA, Esca. And they built pedal tractors primarily in the beginning before moving into die-cast tractors for the 1/16 toy tractors. Esca, TrueScale, Carter, and Ertl, they all were able to license their products through the tractor manufacturers like Oliver, Alice Chalmers, John Deere, International Harvester, etc. Eventually, Eska sold out the True Scale, and so you'll find that the True Scale attachments are very similar to these. And so what's interesting to me is both the International and John Deere, they had two different styles of manure spreaders. And if you look at them, you can see the differences. This one's just got a straight hitch on it, and it has the ag tires on it like it should have. You see those. This one here has the more realistic decals on it, because this one just says McCormick Deering. So they both have the decals on them, tractor spreader, McCormick Deering tractor spreader. You can see those on the sides there. And they had levers on them, so you could engage the beater. So by pulling these little levers down on the fronts, you could engage the beaters on it. And what was pretty common with these is people would put dirt in them, and then the gearing didn't work quite right ever again. Here's a John Deere one. This one has the long levers on it, like a Model R spreader would. And you can see this one actually works. See that right there? But again, this one just had the flat hitch on it, but the long levers to engage it. This other International one just has regular circle tires on it. It's got the more realistic hitch on it. It's like a triangle, but the same kind of beaters to engage it. And this might be, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, the old John Deere Model H. I think this was an H spreader. And this has the short levers on it. You can see only one of the levers actually does anything. The other one just goes back here and hooks up to nothing. But when you engage it, you can see the beaters will turn on this one too. Here I've got a Carter True Scale replica of an International harvester, and I call it a haylage chopper because it's got the pickup teeth, or the pickup for hay, but it looks like the teeth are actually missing on this one. I think there was supposed to be another bar across here with the pickup teeth, so when the wheels turn, not only did it turn the feed auger here, but it also did the pickup teeth. Then you got the crank here on the back, which I'm not sure you can see it. It feeds the blower. You have an adjustable hitch here, and then of course you got the hitch on the back, and then you can turn the chute. This here's an International hay rake, and it's just like the one I had, minus the dolly wheels on the front. And I feel like they really missed an opportunity to make this a lot better. If they'd taken the bar tires, you know, the ag tires they put on the manure spreader on here and put it the wrong way, it would get a lot better traction. And a lot of these toys that were ground driven, so to speak, had hard plastic rib tires on it, and they really don't get much traction on anything. So I feel like they really missed an opportunity there. Right here I've got a 424T John Deere hay baler with a kicker on it, and this is supposed to be spring loaded, and so when you push this right down here it kicks it. It's supposed to actually kick it, and it came with little styrofoam hay bales. You can move the hitch. It's a little bit loose, so it's hard to keep it where it belongs. You've got the lever on the pickup here, so you can put it down, and you can see here. I do have boxes for a number of these. I just have to put my hands on them. In the 80s, John Deere had these yellow and green boxes. In the 70s, I think they were a little different. I know International, they had these blue, they were in a blue box, and the ones in the blue box I think are worth more money. This one had the improved style hitch on it. You can see here the clevis, and same thing, it's adjustable to move, and then the wheels turn the roller, but it's just got the same like turf tires off the lawn and garden tractors, and again, doesn't work that great. Here I've got a couple of grain drills. When Carter TrueScale took over building a lot of these from Eska, they kept the same designs. For example, like this is the John Deere grain drill, and they had what was the equivalent of a 14T baler, but they painted it red. And so when TrueScale built things, it was Carter TrueScale red, and if it was international, that was great. But if it was John Deere, it was painted red, which you have to know what the John Deere stuff looks like in order to really tell. But this one's a John Deere grain drill, and the cool thing about the Carter ones, as you can see, there's a lever here, and it works, and that'll set the cedars down in the ground. And so those do oscillate, or they follow the contour of the ground pretty well. And then you got the opening seed and fertilizer here. So this one has rubber tires on it. They're hard rubber tires with a metal inner wheel on it. Whereas this one here is the later Ertl one, which is still a pretty good looking grain drill. But again, like I said previously, they missed an opportunity to make this better, in that the wheels, they're fixed. You can't lower the drill at all. And here this looks like those are the old disc harrow parts and pieces that they fashioned on there, whereas these right here, you can see how independent that is. Each one of those right there will follow the contour. So that's just really a cool thing about the old ones. And this one has the cheap plastic tires that they don't get a lot of traction. Still can open the bin, but much less quality. This has got quite a bit of plastic. I mean, it's still hefty, but this right here is all metal. So the old one's much better. I call this one a 336. It may be something else. It might be a 338 or who knows. It's got the good hitch on it here. You can see that. And this one doesn't have a spring anymore. It's just got like a teeter-totter thing. And again, this one came with styrofoam hay bales. It has a plastic hitch on the back, and you can see it moving the pickup teeth there. So the McCormick Deering tractor trailer, and this one's been repainted with new decals on it. It has the better steering on it, and this whole frame, the box separates for it. And this is kind of realistic, because if you had this full of ear corn and you came into your corn crib, they usually had a hoist that would lift the front end up, and then the tailgate would open. And this one here, I think, slides up. So it's a slide. Very common. It came with just about every farm set with a flare box wagon. All the companies had one. They were all the same exact design, same everything. They've just painted different colors for whatever manufacturer that you had. And I think I've got probably half a dozen of these. I have both John Deere and International. I like these old ones that actually the hitch went up and down, and it had the automotive steering. It didn't oscillate or anything, but it stayed on pretty well. The four-wheel trailers that just had, a straight hitch, you had to bend it, and then the front wheels weren't really hooked on. And it was kind of a poor design. Here we've just got a regular barge wagon. This one's from the 80s. It has bigger tires on it. Still has the chute on it for unloading your grain. This is the last plow I have. It's a John Deere. It's an F something, F11. I don't remember. It's not a semi-mount. It's a trailer plow, and so it's got the lever here that engages the tail wheel and also the front wheels, and that's what would put it in the ground or not. A lot of times you'll find these with the shares broken off. This lever, especially the little spring thing, you can see I got a piece of wire or a paper clip holding mine on, because that was gone. And then obviously the drop hitch would be missing a lot. Planter units were really prone to breakage, and you'll find a lot of them are missing. Also, the row markers would be missing a lot. This one here is from the 80s. I like this one better, even though it's got plastic on the hoppers. It looks more real. We had an Alice Chalmers one that looked very similar to this. A couple of different corn planters. This is a 494A 4-row John Deere planter, and I got this one in the early 70s. Not a lot of detail. It's pretty much all die cast. The hoppers don't open or anything. You can raise and lower the the wheels to, you know, engage the plane. Was really good at attention to detail, and so you can see this old International drag disc here with the lever on the front, and this will engage the discs. So just like the real ones, when you want to cross a ravine or haul it out to the field, you would straighten the discs out by using that lever. And I am missing a disc on the back here, or the front I should say. The next one I have is a fast hitch disc, and this would go on the back of like the 560, the 400, 450, 340. Kind of a big load on a 340, but it's a big disc hero. This right here was pretty common in the 70s and early 80s. It was this John Deere disc here, and you can use the you can turn the wheels to engage the discs or disengage it. Esca had one which TrueScale took over, and you can see the little remnants of it here. There was a way to make it more realistic. And then the final disc hero I have is one that I made when I was a teenager. It was pretty much a copy of the one that we have on our dairy farm. It was an offset disc like this, and I made it so the wheels can go up and down. You just take the chain off, and that would make the wheels come up, and you put the chain back on to hold them down. Ertl 44 spreader, and it's one of the early models. You can see it's got gearing on it like that, and that will engage the beaters. The problem they made with these is on the tire, this gear here was prone to wear out pretty quickly. And so you can see, even though it's turning, how much is happening back here. So this one actually has 44 on the side, but you can notice that there's no gearing on it, so no more operational manure spreader. And these teeth on here, those were really prone to getting broke off. The final model of the 44 spreader just had plastic rims on it. This one's still die cast. When we start getting into tillage tools, here's a 3-point hitch John Deere plow, full bottom plow, and this right here worked on all the 620, 720, 3010 toy tractors. Hooked pretty well on the back. I'm really not familiar with any of the other toy tractors except for John Deere and International. This here is a full bottom semi-mount Ford plow, and so it hooks on the front, and then there's a lever on the side that allows you to raise and lower the tail wheel, which will engage the shares in the ground. Here we've got a fast hitch 3-bottom plow. This is an Esca. You can see it has the IH decals on it. These are actually pretty hard to find in that condition, and they're pretty pricey. This one here is a little bit damaged. I believe this should have been a 6-bottom plow. What you can see, there's still 6 bottoms on it, but they're a little bit tweaked, and that's because it's been used a little bit aggressively. And then the final one I got this one when I was about 5 years old, and this came with an Ertl farm set. Really not a lot of detail at this point. After that, they were plastic, and they had plastic depth wheels, and I don't have any of those, but still metal to attach to the back of the tractor, but no way to really engage or disengage it other than to push down on it. These trailers right here, these are, you know, the ultimate farm trailer, and they're a little dirty. I should have cleaned them off, but TrueScale on the tailgate, and it's just pretty common. Even when I was a kid, you'd see there weren't a lot of manufacturers of utility trailers when I was a kid. You had like the Snowco ones for snowmobiles and stuff, but as far as like a box trailer, you had Eric, I think. But a lot of people just sawed off the frame on a pickup truck and took the drive shaft out and put a tongue on it and then they just use the back of a truck as a trailer, and that was pretty common when I was a kid. You can't do much without an equipment trailer. It has a dolly on the front, jack stand, I guess you want to call it, with the ramp. The hardest thing I ever had with this was trying to get the ramp to not fall down when you were driving. I guess, yeah, you could snap it ahead a little bit, and it was supposed to hold, but it was like hit or miss. This right here is an interesting toy. They made one for John Deere also. It looked just like this one. This one's missing the lever here that it should have hooked onto here, and that's what picked up the knife and the roller. But it does work. You turn the wheels. So if they had put these kind of tires on that hay rake, it would have worked so much better. You can see the little chain on the back. It ran off the gears, and it was just really cool as far as the moving pieces on it. And then you got the spout here to give the hopper. It's just a really cool piece. And at some point they stopped putting the hitch on the wrong side, so you didn't have it going down the middle of the road. I moved it to the other side. But when I was a kid, I didn't have tons and tons of the metal ones, so I started building my own. And this is just I can't tell what I put. Like, for some reason it looks like 316 or something on the side. I don't know. But I made this hay liner, New Holland baler, which it's not super detailed, but it worked when I was a kid, and it was better than nothing. And we had a Lely tedder. It looked a lot like this. It had these combs that came out, so you could expand it to Ted, and then if you got rain on your rows after you had already raked it up, you put the gates in, and then it kept it in the row for you. And I had made this dump rake here. These right here, these wheels were actually wheels that were on the sliding door of our barn that rolled on. I have a couple of these, and so these right here were still a pretty good trailer because it had this type of tongue on it and the clevis hitch, and so it stayed on pretty well. No longer automotive steering, but all in all it was a pretty good trailer. This one right here is the better one. It actually had a dump mechanism on it, so you'd put this in there like that, and you could just use the hook here, the handle, and that would dump the trailer. And then you got your end gate with a good hitch. It had a little bit more detailed tires, but not automotive. I have this out. I've got this Carter True Scale. It's a 560 tractor, and this was the takeoff from the previous Esca tractors. Really similar. The bucket on the International was basically the reciprocal of the John Deere one. The controls were reversed. The funny thing about the Esca is they weren't steerable. Some of them were, but these ones weren't. They had like a dolly wheel, or a caster wheel, so when you turned it side to side it would steer, but you couldn't steer it by the steering wheel. So when I get into some of these newer toys that I've got, gravity wagon. I feel like I had another one before. It didn't work that great, but it had a different hitch on it. It had the regular hitch. Say no farm was complete without a Tonka dump truck. Some of them had a hydraulic cylinder in it, and it was really cool. It was basically a gas strut like you'd have on your trunk, but mine wasn't. It's just a hand sand loader. The crank is on the other side. It's over here. This is a John Deere pan scraper. It's missing the cab. I have another one of these like 2030s from the 70s there. It differed. In the 80s they didn't have the lever for the dump, and this lever right here changed. International backhoe, John Deere grader, John Deere 450 crawler, the John Deere loader. That's what we always called them. And up here I've got a Bobcat. Well, John Deere skid steer, but I call it a Bobcat still. The big John Deere, I don't even know what number that would be. Here's a 4230 John Deere, and then of course I got the skidder. think the late 90s or the early 2000s, but this was again early 70s. This is a 4230. This one's made in China, but it has the front wheel assist, the oscillating front end, and you can see the caps. The tractor here is a John Deere Model D, and I got this one in the probably the late 70s. And there's a different version. This one's got the hole in the seat, and then the newer one had a solid seat on it. But other than that, they were basically the same. This one made in the United States also, but it wasn't really a fun tractor to play with because the metal wheels didn't really go well on a hardwood floor, and you couldn't steer it, and all the attachments looked stupid on it. So this one mostly just sat around in front of the toy barn as a power. There's a couple different elevators. This one here is a hay conveyor, the 4430 tractor, and this was introduced by Ertl at the same time that John Deere came out with the Soundguard design tractors, and it's just got the regular style hitch on it. But the cool thing about these tractors, where you could, as a little kid, you could stick your fingers. Actually, I could get my whole hand in here and steer it. And it had the knee action oscillating front end on it. So this was kind of a deluxe feature. They had a 4010 before that just had it was like a solid axle on the front with little tiny plastic tires, and that wasn't that great for playing with because the wheels didn't turn, they bent, and it was just kind of a crappy design. And even though these are plastic, this is still a 4430. Had a loader option. I've never seen one. This right here is an International 1586, and this was released, I think, in the late 70s, early 80s. That's when I got this one, was the late 70s. And it's just like the 4430. It's got rubber back tires, the same kind of front end, and you could get your hand in there and steer it. So this was a really cool tractor to have as a kid. 4440, it was just the updated version of the 4430, both by John Deere and Ertl. It had the strobe decal, and I think this was one of the last new tractors I got as a kid, and I touched up the paint. You can see that I spilled some green on it when I was about 12 years old, but I still have the muffler on it. And this one was a really cool tractor because it had the wider balloon tires on the front made of rubber, and this thing was a dream to play with because it just, no matter if you were on hardwood floor or in the dirt, it always worked. Unmolested version of the same tractor. The other one was a 2030. This one, like I said, I really believe it's either a 1020 or a 2020, and there's a little bit of green paint on that one too, so this one's probably been touched up at some point. This one's missing the little rubber cap on this one, but it still has the longer lever. The newer ones didn't have this lever long, and then they deleted the dump mechanism and just made a little tab on it, which was kind of cheesy. With this right here, you were able to kind of like fine grade while you were driving the tractor, which was pretty cool. Didn't have an oscillating front end on it, just a regular straight axle, but this one wasn't too bad. Your skid steer from the early 80s. You can see it's got this, the way the bucket dumps on here, and that's how that utility tractor bucket was after a while. It just had like an oblong, egged out hinge here, and then dump, and then lock back in. And for this, it wasn't too bad, but as a kid, we always called it a John Deere Bobcat, and these were actually pretty tiny, and I think they had a Kohler motor in them. I had any implements to run behind this. The plows and harrows I had were kind of small, but I still used them. This is the early 70s version. You can see it doesn't have the strobe decal on it, and the fenders are all missing on the back. I have no idea what happened to those, but I still have the muffler. This was kind of a cool rig because the whole thing, it articulated and oscillated in the front, and then you just had the regular hitch on the back. But this thing was a beast, and you could still, the steering wheel didn't work, but you just kind of steered it with your hand like this, and you could rest your heel, your palm on it, and it was just a fun tractor to use. So I'm gonna come over here and just show you some of the other stuff. Here I've got this little set of plows here, and I'm guessing it's like a little Genius, but it's got two levers on it to change the pitch and the depth. I have the Chuck Wagon, John Deere Combine. I have a few of these lawn and garden tractors. It was like a 400. A saw rig or a buck saw or a buzz saw, whatever you want to call it. for these, and I used a rubber band to come off the belt pulleys. Here you've got a Model G. This is an unstyled G. The G and the L has had the stack and the air cleaner side by each instead of one behind the other like the A and B. Even the styled ones looked kind of funny. This is an example of one of the ones made in China after the merger with Case IH. You can see it says made in China. I guess their corporate offices are still in Dyersville, but they don't make anything there anymore as far as I know. The cool thing about this one, once they went to China, they really were able to increase the detail, which I guess for collectors that's kind of cool. They went crazy in the early 90s as far as collectibles. All the models just exploded. When I was a kid, they had about 4 models. And then next thing I knew, they had like all the models. But this is a Farmall Super MTA diesel, which is kind of cool. You can see the 2 oil filters on it. Here's my 14T baler. I have the chute. I have a replacement chute to put on it. This one's kind of neat because it has you can open up the twine box, and again you can raise and lower the pickup, and then the wheels make the pickup work. I also made a sprayer. I gotta re-glue that. So I made a sprayer, and you can see the fill right there where my finger is. And then I don't know what I used for these little hoses. I found some from something. This collector's edition, which is interesting because they had so many collector's edition. I don't really think any of the collector's editions are worth anything because they made so many of them. And it's like the stuff that wasn't intended to be a collectible did really well, and the stuff that they tried to like entice collectors, it's like, eh. But again, it's really cool because you can see the detail on this one. This is a white demonstrator from 1950, Farmall straight C with a wide front end on it. This is a newer model 140 with the grill on it like mine. It had a 300 utility. It was like the 2 millionth tractor, or was it the 2 millionth? No, 1 millionth tractor, I think John Deere made us. The good thing about this, it has the automotive steering with the hitch that moves, so when you get over rough ground outside, you don't lose your trailer. And one of the things I thought was super cool about these is I have the literature from these from the 60s and 70s, and it shows like a 30-20 with a 24T baler and one of these on the back catching the hay. And I guess, you know, if you could only find one wagon on your farm and you were doing silage, that it would make sense, I guess, to use this and open the gate and unload your hay off the back. Here's the combine, a 6600, and I think this is 1/24th scale, like the grader and the payloader. And I'm assuming they made them smaller just because of the amount of material it took, and obviously the size of the product it would be. But when you were a kid, it didn't matter. You still played with them all together. And so the grain head moves, it floats, and then you get the spout here to unload your grain in the back. Super just an A. But what's funny about it is if you look closely on it, look really close, you'll see the rock shaft on the side. Because they also made a Super A, and they used this same chassis for the 140. But you see that right in there? It's right in here. You'll see it. It's also pretty common to find these without the spout on it. This one right here, when you turn the crank, nothing happens. But you can take the trailer hitch here and again fold it up underneath. Set it down, then you come up here with your gravity wagon and dump your stuff in, and it elevates. This right here slides down. So this just slides on this tube, and then you should be able to turn this screw auger here, but like I said, this one's locked up.